The blue-green planet of Velros hung like a jewel against the darkness of space, its 3 moons casting silver light across peaceful oceans and sprawling cities. For over 800 years, the Vellani people had known nothing but harmony. Their slender, graceful forms moved through crystal spires that reached toward the stars, their large eyes reflecting the wisdom of a species that had never known true war. But today, everything changed. Captain Nira stood in the central command chamber of the Vellani Defense Station, her pale hands trembling as she watched the tactical display. Red dots filled the screen, hundreds of them moving like a deadly swarm toward their home system. The Krex Empire had finally found them. "How many ships?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. 200 confirmed vessels, Captain," replied Lieutenant Bren, his voice barely above a whisper. "Heavy cruisers, battle destroyers, and—" He paused, swallowing hard. 3 planet killers. Nira closed her eyes. Planet killers. The massive ships could turn entire worlds into balls of molten rock. She had heard stories from other systems, refugees who spoke of their homes burning from orbit. The Krex showed no mercy to anyone who stood in their path. "Time until they reach Velros?" she asked. 72 hours at current speed. Around the command center, other Vellani officers worked frantically at their stations. Their technology was advanced, but it had been built for exploration and peaceful contact with other species. Their small patrol fleet consisted of only 30 vessels designed for asteroid mining and scientific research, not war. General Tomas burst through the chamber doors, his usually calm demeanor shattered. "The outer colonies are gone," he announced grimly. "Kelros, Timani, Zerion, and Balak, all of them. The Krex glassed them from orbit. No survivors." The room fell silent, except for the steady beeping of sensors. 4 billion Vellani had lived on those worlds. Families, children, artists, teachers, all reduced to ash and radioactive dust. The survivors on Velros and the remaining colonies numbered just over 3 billion souls. "What about the Galactic Council?" asked Dr. Vela, the chief scientist. "Surely they'll send help." General Tomas shook his head. "The Council moves too slowly. By the time they debate and vote, we'll be extinct. The nearest Allied fleet is 6 days away." Captain Nira studied the tactical display again. The Krex fleet moved with terrible purpose, their dark ships bristling with weapons. Intelligence reports described their leader, General Voss, as a ruthless commander who collected trophies from conquered worlds. He would show them no mercy. "There has to be something," she whispered. "Some way to call for help." Dr. Vela suddenly straightened at her station. "The emergency beacon," she said. "The ancient long-range transmitter in the deep archives." "That old thing?" Lieutenant Bren asked. "It uses technology from before we joined the galactic community. The translation protocols are centuries out of date." "It's our only chance," Dr. Vela replied. "It can broadcast across half the galaxy. Someone might hear us." General Thomas nodded grimly. "Do it. Send the message to every system we can reach." Dr. Vela's fingers flew across her console, accessing files that hadn't been opened in hundreds of years. The beacon had been built by their ancestors as a last resort, designed to call for aid from any intelligent species within range. The translation matrix was primitive, but it would have to work. "What should the message say?" she asked. Captain Nira thought for a moment, watching the red dots creep closer on the display. "Tell them who we are. Tell them we're peaceful people with families and children. Tell them the Krex are coming to destroy us all, and we have no way to stop them. Ask for help from anyone who can hear us." Dr. Vela began typing the message in their ancient language, trusting the beacon's old computers to translate it properly. She described their beautiful world, their peaceful civilization, and their desperate situation. She spoke of 3 billion innocent lives hanging in the balance. "Message ready," she announced. "Where should I send it?" General Thomas pulled up a star chart. "Broadcast to all systems within 50 light years. Cast the net as wide as possible." "Including the dead zones?" Dr. Vela asked, referring to regions marked as uninhabitable. "Everywhere," the general replied. "Even the death worlds. We need every chance we can get." Dr. Vela hesitated for a moment. The stellar charts marked dozens of systems as completely hostile to life. Planets with toxic atmospheres, extreme radiation, or violent weather that made survival impossible. No intelligent species could exist in such places, but orders were orders. She programmed the beacon to include even the Death World systems, including one small yellow star designated as Sol in their ancient records. According to their data, the third planet was a nightmare of extreme weather, poisonous atmosphere, and deadly radiation. Nothing could live there. Message transmitting now, she announced. The beacon activated with a deep hum that vibrated through the station. Across the galaxy, the desperate plea of the Velani people raced through space at faster than light speeds, searching for anyone who might help. Hours passed. The Krex fleet drew closer, and still no response came from the stars. The Velani prepared for the end, evacuating civilians to underground shelters and saying goodbye to loved ones. But far away, on a blue world orbiting a yellow star, something impossible was about to happen. The death world called Earth was very much alive, and its inhabitants were about to receive a message that would change everything. The massive dish of the Arecibo Deep Space Monitoring Station turned slowly against the star-filled sky of Puerto Rico. Inside the control room, Dr. James Park was finishing his night shift when every alarm in the facility suddenly began screaming, at once. "What the hell?" he muttered, rushing to his console. The screens showed something impossible, an incoming transmission from deep space, encoded with mathematical patterns that clearly indicated intelligent origin. But this wasn't like anything in their databases. "Rodriguez, get over here," he called to his partner. "We've got something big." Maria Rodriguez rolled her chair over, her coffee forgotten as she stared at the data streaming across the monitors. "This is incredible, James. The signal is coming from... Wait, that can't be right. It's from the Vega sector over 25 light-years away. And it's not random noise," Dr. Park added, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "Look at these patterns. This is definitely artificial. Someone or something is trying to communicate." Within minutes, every major space agency on Earth was alerted. Similar signals were being detected by radio telescopes in Australia, Chile, and Russia. The message was being broadcast on multiple frequencies, ensuring maximum coverage. At the United Nations Space Command headquarters in Geneva, Admiral Sarah Kane was pulled from her sleep by an urgent call. As the head of Earth's Unified Space Defense Program, she had prepared for this moment her entire career. First contact with alien intelligence. "How long until we can decode it?" she asked as she strode into the communication center, still buttoning her uniform. "We're running it through every translation protocol we have," replied Dr. Chen Liu, the head linguist. "The mathematical portions are clear, basic physics and chemistry that any advanced species would understand. But the rest..." He shook his head. "It's like they're using very old translation software." "Keep working on it," Admiral Kane ordered. "And get me the Security Council on emergency session. If this is what I think it is, we need to be ready." Across the globe, teams of scientists, linguists, and computer experts worked frantically to decode the alien message. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source, Dr. Robert Singh, a graduate student at MIT who specialized in ancient computer languages. "It's not that the translation is wrong," he explained over video call to the assembled experts. "It's that it's old, really old. Like they're using translation software from hundreds of years ago with outdated databases. Can you fix it, Admiral?" Kane asked. "Already working on it," Dr. Singh replied, his fingers dancing across his keyboard. "Give me 2 hours." Those 2 hours felt like eternity. Military leaders around the world held emergency meetings. The President of the United States canceled all appointments. The Chinese premier called an emergency session of the Politburo. Russia's leadership gathered in the Kremlin. Finally, Dr. Singh's voice crackled through the speakers at UN Space Command. "I've got it. Patching the translation through now." The room fell silent as a calm, artificial voice began to speak. "To any who receive this message, we are the Velani people of the world Velros. We are a peaceful civilization of 3 billion souls. We have families, children, and dreams just as you might. We face complete destruction in less than 3 days. Admiral Kane felt a chill run down her spine as the message continued. They go, Krek's empire has invaded our system with 200 warships. They have already destroyed 4 of our worlds, killing 4 billion of our people. We have no military capable of stopping them. Our children cry in fear, and our elders prepare for death. If there is anyone out there who can hear this, please, help us. We do not wish to die. The message repeated the coordinates of their system and included technical data about the Krek's fleet, ship numbers, weapon capabilities, and estimated time until the final assault on their homeworld. The communications center remained silent for long moments after the message ended. Finally, Admiral Kane spoke. Get me the Security Council. Full emergency session. Every leader, every military commander. Now, within hours, representatives from every major nation on Earth were connected via secure video link. The alien message was played in full, translated into dozens of languages. The response was immediate and unanimous. We have to help them, declared the president of Brazil. 3 billion innocent lives. But we've never even made contact with aliens before, protested the German chancellor. How do we know this isn't some kind of trap? The data checks out, Admiral Kane replied. Our deep space sensors confirm unusual activity in that sector. Something big is happening there. The British Prime Minister leaned forward. What's our military capability in that region? General Marcus Webb, head of the Global Defense Force, activated a holographic display. We can have our entire deep space fleet operational within 18 hours. 800 ships total. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and 12 dreadnoughts. 800 against 200, mused the Japanese Prime Minister. But we know nothing about their technology. We know they're genocidal murderers, stated the Russian president bluntly. That's enough for me. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for the possibility of hostile, alien contact. They had built weapons and ships designed to protect Earth from any threat. Now, for the first time, they would use that fleet to protect someone else. The final vote was unanimous. Every nation on Earth agreed to commit their space forces to the rescue mission. Admiral Kane stood as the session ended. All fleet commanders, this is Priority Alpha. Begin immediate deployment. We launch in 16 hours. Around the globe, massive shipyards burst into activity. Crews that had been training for decades finally received their first real mission. Weapons systems that had never been fired in anger were brought online. Hundreds of thousands of personnel prepared for humanity's first interstellar war. The Villani had sent their message to what they thought was a dead world. They were about to discover that Earth was very much alive and very, very dangerous. The human fleet hung in the darkness between stars, 800 vessels arranged in perfect formation. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Defiance, watching the final preparations through the massive view screen. The dreadnought stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull bristling with weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Final jump calculations complete, Admiral, reported Commander Jackson from the navigation station. We'll drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the Villani system in exactly 1 hour. Signal the fleet, Admiral Kane ordered. All ships to battle stations, weapons hot, shields up. We don't know what we're jumping into. Throughout the massive armada, crews scrambled to their positions. On the carrier Enterprise, fighter pilots strapped themselves into cockpits of sleek interceptors. The destroyer Lightning powered up its railgun batteries. The cruiser Thunderbolt armed its nuclear missile pods. Lieutenant Tom Harris sat at his weapons console aboard the destroyer Fury, his hands steady despite the nervous energy coursing through him. Like every member of the fleet, he had trained for this moment his entire career. But theory was very different from reality. You nervous, Tom? Asked his bunkmate, Petty Officer Lisa Chen, from the sensor station beside him. Terrified, Tom admitted. We're about to fight aliens we've never seen, using weapons we've never fired in anger, to save people we've never met. That's what makes us human, Lisa replied with a grin. We're crazy enough to help strangers. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Kane reviewed the tactical data one final time. According to the Villani transmission, the Krex fleet consisted of 200 vessels of unknown capability. Her own force was larger, but that meant nothing if the enemy possessed superior technology. 30 seconds to jump point, announced Commander Jackson. All ships prepare for combat insertion, Admiral Kane broadcast to the fleet. Remember, we're here to save lives. Hit hard, hit fast, and show these Krex bastards what happens when they threaten innocent people. The fleet jumped. Reality twisted and stretched as 800 human warships tore through the fabric of space-time itself. For a moment that lasted eternity, they existed between dimensions, racing faster than light toward their destination. Then, they arrived. The Villani system spread out before them in all its terrible beauty. The blue-green world of Velros hung in the distance, surrounded by its 3 silver moons. But between the human fleet and the peaceful planet, space was filled with the dark shapes of Krex warships. On the surface of Velros, Captain Nira nearly fell from her chair as alarms began screaming throughout the defense station. "What is it?" General Thomas demanded, rushing to her side. "Massive fleet signature just appeared at the system's edge," Lieutenant Bren reported, his voice shaking. 800 contacts. 800. The Krex brought reinforcements, Dr. Vela whispered in horror. "We're finished." But as the sensor data refined, something didn't make sense. The new ships weren't moving to join the Krex fleet. Instead, they were arranging themselves in what looked like an attack formation. Aboard his flagship Dark Conquest, General Voss of the Krex Empire studied the unexpected arrivals with cold interest. His reptilian features showed no emotion as he processed the tactical data. "Unknown vessels. This is General Voss of the Krex Imperial Navy," he broadcast on all frequencies. "You are interfering in a lawful annexation of enemy territory. Withdraw immediately, or be destroyed." The response came from the largest ship in the new fleet, its signal strong and clear. "General Voss, this is Admiral Kane of the Earth Defense Force. We are here in response to a distress call from the Villani people. You will cease your attack and withdraw from this system immediately." "Earth?" General Voss consulted his database. "There is no inhabited world by that designation in this sector." "You're looking at 800 ships that say otherwise," Admiral Kane replied calmly. "This is your only warning. Leave now, or we'll make you leave." On Velros, the Villani leaders listened to the exchange in amazement. "Earth," Dr. Vela whispered, checking her ancient star charts. That's Sol 3, the Death World." "Impossible," General Thomas said. "Nothing can live on Death Worlds. The radiation alone would kill any organic life." But even as they spoke, the human fleet was spreading into attack formation with military precision that spoke of long experience with warfare. General Voss studied the newcomers more carefully. Their ships were bulky and angular, lacking the elegant curves of most galactic designs, but they radiated energy signatures unlike anything in his database. "Analysis," he ordered his tactical officer. "The ships appear to be heavily armored, sir. Unusual weapon configurations. I'm detecting nuclear reactors on every vessel and, sir, some of these energy readings are off the charts." General Voss had conquered 47 systems for the Krex Empire. He had never retreated from a battle. These newcomers, whoever they were, would learn the price of challenging Krex supremacy. "All ships, attack formation," he ordered. "Destroy the unknown fleet, then proceed with the original mission." The Krex warships began to move, their sleek forms accelerating toward the human armada. 200 vessels against 800. The numbers favored the newcomers, but Krex technology had never failed them before. Admiral Kane watched the enemy fleet advance on her tactical display. After decades of preparation and training, humanity was finally going to war among the stars. "All ships, weapons free," she commanded. "Let's show them what Earth is capable of." The human fleet responded instantly. 800 warships turned their guns toward the approaching Krex force. Nuclear reactors roared to full power. Particle cannons charged to maximum output. Missile tubes flooded with live ammunition. In the space between two fleets, the fate of 3 billion Villani lives hung in the balance. The Death Worlders had arrived, and the galaxy was about to learn why Earth had earned its fearsome reputation. The battle for Velros was about to begin. The first shots of humanity's interstellar war lit up the darkness of space like deadly fireworks. Admiral Kane watched from the bridge of the Defiance as her fleet opened fire with weapons forged in the crucible of Earth's violent history. "Fire!" she commanded. 800 human warships unleashed hell. The destroyer Lightning fired its railguns, sending tungsten projectiles racing through space at a significant fraction of light speed. The cruiser Thunderbolt launched a spread of nuclear-tipped missiles, each warhead capable of vaporizing a city block. The dreadnought Titan powered up its main particle cannon, a weapon that could crack a moon in half. General Voss watched in shock as the human weapons struck his advancing fleet. The lead Krex destroyer simply disappeared. One moment it was there, the next it was expanding debris and superheated gas. "What kind of weapons are those?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "I don't know, sir. The projectile velocities are beyond our database parameters. And those missile warheads, they're nuclear fusion devices, primitive but incredibly destructive." Another Krex ship exploded as human missiles found their mark. The elegant alien vessel was torn apart by nuclear fire, its crew vaporized instantly. "Impossible," General Voss snarled. "No species uses such barbaric weapons in space combat." But the humans weren't finished. The carrier Enterprise launched its fighter wings, small, fast craft that swarmed toward the Krex fleet like angry wasps. Unlike the large, elegant fighters used by most galactic civilizations, human interceptors were compact killing machines designed for one purpose: destroying enemy ships. Lieutenant Sarah Williams piloted her fighter Hawk 7 straight into the heart of the Krex formation. Her craft was barely 15 meters long, but it carried enough firepower to cripple ships 10 times its size. "This is Hawk Leader," she broadcast to her squadron. "Target the big one on the left. Hit and run tactics, just like training." The human fighters struck with coordinated precision. They didn't engage in elegant dogfights or honor duels. They swarmed their targets from multiple angles, fired everything they had, then disappeared before the enemy could respond. A Krex heavy cruiser found itself under attack by 30 human fighters simultaneously. Missiles and cannon fire tore through its shields and armor. Within minutes, the massive ship was drifting powerless, its hull breached in dozens of places. On Velros, the Vellani leadership watched the battle through their long-range sensors in stunned silence. "How is this possible?" whispered Dr. Vela. "They're using nuclear weapons in space combat. That's insane." "And kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds," added Lieutenant Bren. "The energy requirements alone should be impossible for ships that size." Captain Nira studied the tactical display as human ships maneuvered with deadly efficiency. "Look at their formation patterns. They're not fighting like any civilized species. They're fighting like pack hunters." She was right. The human fleet moved with the coordinated brutality of predators that had evolved from millions of years of warfare. Ships supported each other with covering fire, while others flanked the enemy. They used combined arms tactics that maximized their firepower while minimizing their exposure. General Voss found his carefully planned battle turning into a nightmare. His fleet outnumbered the enemy 4-1 in individual engagements. But the humans never fought fair. They concentrated overwhelming force on single targets, destroyed them quickly, then moved to the next victim. "Sir, we've lost 40 ships in the first 20 minutes, his tactical officer reported. "Their weapons they're designed to kill, not disable. No mercy, no quarter." "What about our superior technology?" General Voss demanded. "It doesn't matter, sir. They're not trying to match our technology. They're using brute force and superior numbers. And their tactics, it's like they've been fighting wars their entire evolutionary history." The human dreadnought Defiance demonstrated this perfectly as it engaged 3 Krex heavy cruisers simultaneously. Instead of elegant maneuvering, the massive ship simply absorbed enemy fire on its thick armor while returning devastating volleys from its main guns. Commander Jackson watched the tactical display with professional appreciation. "They're trying to fight us like gentlemen, Admiral. Nice formations, elegant maneuvers, trying to disable rather than destroy. And we're fighting like humans, Admiral Kane replied grimly. No rules, no mercy. Whatever it takes to win, the bro. Defiance fired its main particle cannon point blank into a Krex cruiser. The alien ship buckled and broke apart under the assault, its crew never having a chance to surrender. Across the battle zone, human ships demonstrated weapons and tactics that horrified the watching Villani. The destroyer Fury used its nuclear mines to create kill zones that trapped enemy ships. The cruiser Vengeance fired cluster munitions that turned space itself into a deadly obstacle course. They fight like the galaxy is trying to kill them, General Thomas observed from the defense station on Velros. Like every battle is a fight for survival. That's because it is, Captain Nira realized. Look at their home planet's designation. In our files, Sol 3, extreme gravity, violent weather, toxic atmosphere, dangerous radiation. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every single day. A true death world, Dr. Vela breathed. And they didn't just survive it, they conquered it. The battle raged for 6 hours. General Voss watched his fleet dissolve under the relentless human assault. These Deathworlders didn't fight wars, they fought extinctions. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy was designed with one goal: the complete elimination of the enemy. Sir, his communications officer called out, the rear guard is requesting permission to retreat. General Voss looked at his tactical display. Of his original 200 ships, fewer than 60 remained combat effective. The human fleet had lost only 30 vessels, and they showed no signs of slowing down. Signal general retreat, he ordered, the words bitter in his mouth. All ships withdraw to jump point. The surviving Krex vessels turned and fled, jumping to hyperspace as fast as their damaged engines could manage. Behind them, the human fleet held position, their guns still hot and ready. On Velros, 3 billion Villani citizens looked up at their star-filled sky with new hope. The Deathworlders had kept their promise. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Kane stood in the crystal gardens of Velros looking up at the alien sky. 2 of the planet's 3 moons hung overhead like silver coins, while the third was just a crescent on the horizon. Around her, the Villani capital city stretched in graceful spires that seemed to grow from the earth itself. It's beautiful, she said to Captain Nira, who walked beside her through the peaceful gardens. Hard to believe anyone would want to destroy this. Captain Nira's large eyes reflected the moonlight as she nodded. We had almost given up hope when your fleet arrived. The Krex have destroyed so many worlds. We thought we would be next. Not while humans are around, Admiral Kane replied firmly. We've seen what the Krex do to peaceful people. That stops now. They walked in comfortable silence past fountains that sparkled in the alien starlight. The formal first contact ceremonies had ended hours ago, but Admiral Kane found herself drawn to these quiet moments with the Villani leadership. These people had built something remarkable, a civilization based on cooperation and knowledge rather than conquest. Admiral, Captain Nira said softly, may I ask you something that has been troubling our scientists? Of course. Your planet, Earth, our records show it as completely uninhabitable. Extreme gravity, violent weather systems, dangerous radiation levels. How did your species not only survive, but develop the technology to travel between stars? Admiral Kane smiled grimly. Because Earth tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. Earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, ice ages, asteroid impacts, deadly predators, diseases that could wipe out entire populations. We didn't just survive, we adapted, we fought back, we conquered our own world. And that made you warriors, Captain Nira observed. It made us survivors, Admiral Kane corrected. There's a difference. Warriors fight for glory or conquest. We fight to protect what matters. Family, friends, innocent people who can't protect themselves. Meanwhile, in the communications center of the defense station, Lieutenant Bren was monitoring Galactic news feeds. What he saw made his hands shake with excitement. General Thomas, you need to see this, he called out. General Thomas hurried over to the lieutenant's station, where multiple news broadcasts played simultaneously from across the galaxy. The story is spreading, Lieutenant Bren explained. Every Major news network in civilized space is reporting what happened here. They're calling it the miracle of Velros, the day the Deathworlders came to save a peaceful species. On the screens, alien reporters from dozens of different species discuss the implications of humanity's intervention. The normally calm anchors showed obvious excitement as they reported details of the battle. In breaking news, the peaceful Velani civilization has been saved by an unknown species calling themselves humans from a planet designated Sol 3, announced a reptilian news anchor. Military analysts are stunned by the effectiveness of their so-called Death World tactics. Another broadcast showed grainy footage of human warships in action. The human fleet demonstrated weapons technology unlike anything in our databases, explained a floating jellyfish-like creature. Nuclear weapons, kinetic bombardment, and coordinated pack tactics that completely overwhelmed the numerically inferior Krex force. General Thomas watched in amazement as the reports continued. They're showing our distress call to the entire galaxy. Every species now knows that Earth responded to help complete strangers. And look at this, Lieutenant Bren added, switching to another channel. The Krex Empire has issued a statement. The screen showed a formal Krex military briefing. A scarred general stood at a podium, his reptilian features twisted with barely controlled rage. The Krex Empire suffered a temporary setback due to unexpected interference from an unknown hostile force, he announced. We are investigating these humans and will respond appropriately to their unprovoked aggression. Unprovoked aggression? General Thomas laughed bitterly. They were committing genocide. But other broadcasts brought better news. On worlds across the galaxy, peaceful species were celebrating humanity's intervention. Donations poured in to help rebuild the destroyed Velani colonies. Most importantly, other civilizations were beginning to ask the same question. Could these Deathworlders help protect them too? Dr. Vela burst into the communications center, her arms full of data tablets. You have to see these, she said breathlessly. We're receiving communications from over 40 different star systems. They're all asking the same thing. Can the humans help them against various threats? She activated a holographic display showing the galactic map. Red dots marked systems under attack by aggressive empires. Yellow dots showed civilizations facing other dangers, pirates, raiders, or natural disasters. The Helix Federation is being invaded by the Score Collective, Dr. Vela explained, pointing to a cluster of red dots. The gentle folk of Andros are being enslaved by criminal syndicates. The crystal singers of Tau Ceti are facing extinction from a plague that their medical technology can't cure. General Thomas studied the map with growing amazement. They all want Earth's help? More than that, Dr. Vela replied. Several peaceful species are offering to share their most advanced technologies in exchange for human protection. Medical advances, manufacturing techniques, scientific discoveries. They're willing to give us anything if we'll stand guard against the predators. Back in the Crystal Gardens, Admiral Kane received an urgent communication from Earth. The holographic image of the UN Secretary General appeared before her. Admiral, the response has been overwhelming, he reported. We're receiving formal requests for assistance from dozens of civilizations. The Security Council has voted to establish a permanent peacekeeping force in this sector of the galaxy. What are my orders, sir? Admiral Kane asked. You're being promoted to Fleet Admiral and given command of the new Galactic Protection Force. Your mission is to respond to threats against peaceful civilizations and establish Earth as the primary defensive power in this region of space. Admiral, Kane felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Humanity had spent centuries preparing to defend Earth from alien threats. Now they would defend aliens from each other. I'll need more ships, she said, already being built. We're converting our entire military-industrial complex to interstellar operations. Within 2 years, you'll have 5,000 ships under your command. Captain Nira watched the exchange with quiet satisfaction. The Deathworlders hadn't just saved her people, they had given hope to the entire galaxy. For the first time in millennia, peaceful species had protectors who couldn't be bought, intimidated, or reasoned with by aggressors. As the human admiral ended her communication with Earth, Captain Nira spoke softly. The galaxy is changing, isn't it? Admiral Kane nodded, looking up at the alien stars. Every bully in the galaxy just learned that their victims have friends now. Friends who don't back down from a fight. Across space on 100 different worlds, aggressive empires were receiving the same message. The age of easy conquest was over. The Death Worlders had joined the Galactic community, and they had made their position clear. Innocent people would be protected, no matter the cost. The Krex Empire and others like them could either learn to coexist peacefully or face the consequences of making enemies with a species that had learned to fight on a world that never showed mercy. The galaxy would never be the same. The ship shook again. Captain Tarn grabbed the edge of the command console to keep his balance. The lights flickered, plunging the bridge into darkness for 3 heartbeats before the backup systems engaged. "Status report," he demanded, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his stomach. "Main power at 23% and falling," replied Officer Mira from her station. Her blue skin had paled to an ashy gray. "The dark energy storm is growing faster than we predicted. It's already consumed the outer colonies." Tarn looked at the main screen. The storm didn't look like a normal space phenomenon. It was a churning mass of nothingness, a hole in reality that devoured everything it touched. Matter, energy, even light itself, was pulled into its endless hunger. And it was heading straight for Lumina, their homeworld. "How many ships made it out?" he asked. Mira's 4-fingered hands trembled over her console. 7 transport vessels are confirmed safe, carrying about 12,000 citizens. She paused. "Captain, that's less than 1% of our population." The weight of those numbers pressed down on Tarn's shoulders. The Lumi civilization had existed for over 50,000 years. They had built wonders, created art that moved the soul, and explored the stars with peaceful curiosity. Now they faced extinction, reduced to a handful of refugees on failing ships. "And the Alliance? Have they responded to our calls?" Tarn asked, though he already knew the answer. "No, sir. The nearest Alliance patrol is 3 weeks away at best speed. We have..." Mira checked her instruments. "Perhaps 3 days before the storm reaches our current position." The door to the bridge slid open. Elder Vel entered, leaning heavily on his walking staff. At nearly 200 years old, the scientist was ancient by Lumi standards, his skin wrinkled and his head tendrils thin and gray, but his mind remained. "Sharp, Captain," he said, inclining his head. "The council is assembled in the main hall. They await your recommendation." Tarn nodded grimly. "Tell them I'll be there shortly." When the door closed behind Vel, Tarn turned to his communication officer. "Prepare the emergency broadcast system. Full spectrum, all languages in the database." Officer Lin looked up in alarm. "Sir, a broadcast that powerful will reach beyond Alliance space. The regulations clearly state..." "I know what the regulations state," Tarn cut him off. "But the Alliance can't help us now. We need to try everything." "Even calling to the Death Worlders?" Lin whispered, the word itself seeming to chill the air. Tarn didn't answer immediately. The Death Worlders. Species that evolved on planets so harsh and deadly that they should never have produced intelligent life. Planets with crushing gravity, extreme temperatures, poisonous atmospheres, and deadly radiation. Planets like the one called Earth. "We'll call to anyone who can hear us," Tarn finally said. "Get it ready." The council chamber was really just the ship's largest meeting room, but the 27 representatives of the surviving Lumi colonies had done their best to give it dignity. They sat in a perfect circle as tradition demanded, though the makeshift nature of their arrangement was a painful reminder of all they had lost. Captain Tarn stood in the center of the circle, feeling their eyes upon him. Some showed fear, others hope, but most simply looked tired. They had been running for weeks as their worlds fell one by one to the dark energy storm. "Honored representatives," Tarn began. "Our situation is dire. The storm continues to accelerate. At current speeds, it will overtake our vessel in 3 days. Our engines are failing and our calls to the Alliance have gone unanswered." Murmurs spread through the circle. A female representative named Fen raised her hand. "Captain, what options remain to us?" Tarn took a deep breath. I propose we send out an unrestricted distress call. Full power, all frequencies, beyond Alliance space. The chamber erupted in voices. Elder Vel raised his staff, bringing immediate silence. You suggest we call to the Forbidden Zones? Vel asked, his voice heavy. To the Deathworlders? I suggest. We call to anyone who might help us, Tarn replied. We cannot afford to be selective. Representative John, a young colony leader with bright orange head tendrils, stood up. The stories say the Deathworlders eat flesh, that they breathe poison and drink acid, that a single one could kill dozens of our kind with their bare hands. The stories are ancient and likely exaggerated, Tarn said, though he wasn't entirely convinced himself. And right now, legendary monsters seem less frightening than the very real destruction approaching us. Elder Vel tapped his staff thoughtfully on the floor. There is some wisdom in desperation, I suppose, but let us be clear about what we risk. The Alliance isolated the Deathworld species for good reason. Their history is written in blood. Their evolution rewarded violence and aggression. If they answer our call, they may save us from the storm only to enslave or destroy us themselves. A heavy silence fell over the room. Tarn looked around at the gathered representatives, the last leaders of a dying civilization. I understand the risk, he said quietly. But I ask you this. If we do nothing, our extinction is certain. If we call for help, including to the Deathworlders, our extinction is merely probable. I cannot in good conscience choose certain death over a chance at survival. The council debated for hours. Voices rose and fell. Ancient prejudices battled against immediate fears. In the end, pragmatism won. Send the call, Elder Vel finally said, his voice weary but resolved. But include warnings about our situation. Perhaps even the Deathworlders will understand the concept of mercy. In the communication bay, Officer Lin prepared the message. It would be simple: their location, the nature of their emergency, and a plea for immediate evacuation assistance. It would be translated into every language in their database, including the harsh primitive tongues of the Deathworld species. Captain Tarn watched as the final preparations were made. Part of him hoped the Alliance would somehow respond first. Another part wondered if death by the storm might be preferable to whatever horrors might come from beyond the boundaries of civilized space. Ready, sir, Lin announced. Tarn closed his eyes briefly. Send it. A high-pitched whine filled the room as the communication array drew power from the ship's already strained systems. The lights dimmed again, but held. On the status display, Tarn could see the message radiating outward at light speed, carrying their desperate plea across the stars. Message away, Lin confirmed. Now we wait. The wait wouldn't be long. Given their ship's failing systems, they had days at most before the storm consumed them. If help didn't arrive by then, it wouldn't matter who had heard their call. Tarn returned to the bridge and stared at the view screen. The storm looked larger than before, a growing emptiness against the starfield. He wondered how something so destructive could also be so eerily beautiful. Sir, called Mira from her station. I'm detecting unusual tachyon emissions from Sector 7. It could be a ship using faster-than-light communication. Tarn felt his heart quicken. Alliance? Mira's face fell as she analyzed the reading. No, sir. The pattern doesn't match any Alliance species. From the science station, Elder Vel looked up sharply. Could it be? Unknown, Mira cut in. But whatever it is, it's receiving our message. And, sir, I think it's changing course, heading toward us. Captain Tarn gripped the arms of his command chair. Their call had been heard. But by whom? Alliance rescuers? Some unknown peaceful species? Or had they just invited predators to their door? Continue broadcasting, he ordered. And power up whatever weapons we have left, just in case. As the ship trembled under the distant influence of the storm, the Lumi waited to see who would answer their desperate plea, their saviors, or their doom. Commander Jack Reed rubbed his tired eyes as he stared at the screen in front of him. 3 days without proper sleep had left dark circles under his eyes, but excitement kept him going. The message they had picked up was playing again. Strange, symbols flowing across the screen as the translation software worked. "Anything new?" asked Dr. Bell as she entered the room, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Reed accepted one gratefully. "The computer says it's definitely not random noise. There's a pattern, a message." "From space," Dr. Bell said, still sounding like she couldn't believe it. "Actual aliens." It had started as a routine day at the Deep Space Listening Post in Alaska. Reed and his team monitored space for interesting signals, usually just natural phenomena like pulsars or quasars. But 3 days ago, they had detected something different, a repeating pattern coming from a specific point in space, too regular to be natural. The door opened again and General West walked in, followed by representatives from several world governments. They had been arriving steadily since Reed sent out his report. "Please tell me you have something concrete," said the general. "I've got the UN Security Council breathing down my neck." Reed nodded and pressed a button on his console. The speakers crackled, and then a strange voice filled the room. It spoke in no human language, the sounds lilting and musical, rising and falling in complex patterns. "This is the original transmission," Reed explained. "And this—" He pressed another button, and the same message played, but this time in English, spoken by the flat voice of the translation computer. "Emergency. Civilization in danger. Dark energy anomaly consuming our worlds. Ship failing. 12,000 survivors. Need immediate evacuation. Coordinates follow." The room fell silent as the message continued, giving detailed space coordinates and technical information about their situation. "It's real," whispered one of the officials. "Actually real." General West cleared his throat. "Commander Reed, your assessment?" Reed stood up straight. "Sir, I believe this is a genuine distress call from an extraterrestrial civilization. The signal contains complex mathematical sequences that couldn't be random. Their situation appears dire." "And how far away are they?" asked a woman in a crisp business suit, the science advisor to the president. "Based on the coordinates, about 4 light years. The signal took 4 years to reach us." "Then they're probably already dead," said someone in the back. Reed shook his head. "Not necessarily. According to their message, this dark energy anomaly moves slower than light. They might still be alive, still waiting for help." "Help from us?" General West raised an eyebrow. "We've barely left our own solar system." "Actually, sir," said Dr. Bell, stepping forward, "we might be able to reach them." She brought up a new screen showing 3 sleek spacecraft. "The Horizon Project. 3 prototype ships with experimental faster-than-light drives. They've completed successful test jumps to Mars orbit." "Those are military prototypes," objected the general. "Not rescue vessels." Reed leaned forward, his voice urgent. "Sir, this is first contact. If we respond, if we help them, we establish humanity's place in the galaxy as a species that answers calls for help. This could be the most important moment in human history." The debate lasted for hours, then days. World leaders argued over risks and resources. Scientists debated the physics of the situation. Military advisors worried about potential threats. But in the end, the decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. 3 weeks later, Commander Reed stood on the bridge of the Earthship Horizon Alpha, leading a small fleet of 3 vessels toward the source of the alien distress call. The experimental drives had never been tested at this distance, but they had no choice but to try. "Final checks complete," reported Navigator Wilson from her station. "All systems green." Reed looked around at his crew, 20 of Earth's best, chosen from thousands of volunteers. They knew the risks. The drives might fail. They might arrive too late. The aliens might see them as a threat rather than rescuers. "Send a message to Horizon Beta and Gamma," Reed ordered. "Begin FTL sequence on my mark." The communication officer nodded. "Beta and Gamma standing by, sir." Reed took a deep breath. "Mark." The stars outside the view screen blurred as the drives engaged. The ship vibrated, metal groaning under forces it was never designed to withstand. Warning alarms blared as radiation levels spiked throughout the vessel. "Radiation shields failing," shouted Engineer Lopez from the engine room comm. "We're getting levels that should be lethal." "Can you fix it?" Reed asked, gritting his teeth against a sudden wave of nausea. "Not without stopping," Lopez replied. "But if we stop now, we might not get the drives working again." Reed looked around at his crew. They were all suffering, skin reddening, noses bleeding, eyes watering, but no one suggested turning back. "Keep going," Reed ordered. "Full speed." For 14 hours, they endured conditions that pushed human endurance to its limits. The medical officer injected everyone with radiation countermeasures, but they were operating well beyond safe levels. By the time they dropped out of FTL, half the crew had radiation sickness. "Status report," Reed croaked, wiping blood from his nose. "We've arrived at the coordinates," Wilson said weakly from her station. "Horizon Beta and Gamma are with us." Reed forced himself to stand, ignoring the pain that shot through his body. "What do we see?" The main screen showed a strange sight. A swirling black mass spreading across space, swallowing stars as it grew. And at its edge, a single ship, its design unlike anything humans had ever built. It was elegant, with flowing lines and what looked like crystalline structures along its hull. But parts of it were dark, damaged. "Life signs?" Reed asked. "Scanning," said the science officer. "Definitely detecting living beings aboard, but their ship is in bad shape. That anomaly is pulling it in." "Open a channel," Reed ordered. "All frequencies, let them know we're here." For several long minutes there was no response. Then the screen flickered and an alien face appeared. It had blue skin, large eyes, and what looked like tentacles on its head. It stared at Reed with an expression that might have been shock. "This is Commander Jack Reed of the Earthship Horizon Alpha," Reed said clearly. "We received your distress call. We're here to help." The alien spoke, its language a musical series of sounds. The translation computer worked quickly. "Earth?" the alien said, its voice filled with disbelief. "You are from the planet Earth? A death world?" Reed frowned, confused by the term. "Yes, we're from Earth. We've come to evacuate your people. Your ship appears damaged." The alien turned away, speaking urgently to someone off-screen. When it turned back, its expression seemed different. "Fearful?" "We thank you for responding," the alien said carefully. "But you should know. Your world is classified as extremely dangerous in our records. Your species," it paused, "is considered potentially hazardous." Reed couldn't help but smile slightly despite the pain of his radiation burn. "Well, right now that anomaly looks a lot more hazardous than we do. Will you accept our help?" The alien was silent for a moment. Then it bowed its head. "I am Captain Tarn of the Lumi vessel Light of Dawn," it said. "And yes, Commander Reed of Earth, we will accept your help. We have no choice." As Reed began coordinating the rescue mission, he couldn't help but wonder why these aliens seemed almost as afraid of their rescuers as they were of the thing trying to kill them. What did they know about humans that made them so nervous? He would soon find out. Captain Tarn watched the human ships approach with a mixture of hope and dread. The vessels were ugly by Lumi standards, all sharp angles and exposed metal, looking more like weapons than transportation, but they were their only chance of survival. "R2. We really going to let them board our ship?" asked Officer Mira, her voice trembling slightly. "The Deathworlders?" "We don't have a choice," replied Tarn. "Our engines are completely dead now. The storm will pull us in within hours." On the screen, the dark energy anomaly loomed larger than ever, a hungry void eating the stars. Their ship shuddered as another system failed, plunging part of the vessel into darkness. Elder Vel hobbled onto the bridge, his ancient face lined with worry. "Captain, I've been reviewing our old records about Earth. It's worse than we thought." "How so?" asked Tarn, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "Their planet has crushing gravity, extreme temperature ranges, and constant natural disasters. Their atmosphere contains oxygen, a corrosive gas that would burn our lungs, and the natives—" Vel paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. They evolved as pursuit predators. Their bodies are designed to chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion. A chill ran through the bridge. Pursuit predators. The concept was alien to the peaceful Lumi, who had evolved from plant-tending herd creatures. Their history is filled with war, Vel continued. They fight constantly, even among themselves, and they eat the flesh of other creatures. Elder, please, Tarn said sharply. These beings have traveled a great distance to save us. Whatever their history, they are here now, offering help. The communication panel chimed. Captain, said Officer Lin, the Earth ship is hailing us again. Their commander Reed wishes to discuss rescue plans. Tarn straightened his uniform. Put him through. The human appeared on screen again. Tarn tried not to flinch at the sight of the alien being. Its skin was a pinkish brown, its face dominated by a protruding nose and small eyes that seemed to bore into him. The teeth visible when it spoke were clearly those of an omnivore, some sharp for tearing flesh. Most disturbing were the radiation burns visible on its skin, injuries that would have killed a Lumi, but which this human seemed to be ignoring. Captain Tarn, Reed said, his translator converting his harsh sounds into Lumi language. We've analyzed your situation. That anomaly is pulling your ship in faster than we expected. We need to begin evacuation immediately. Our people are ready, Tarn replied. But I must warn you, our atmosphere and biology are very different from yours. Our air contains gases that may be harmful to you. Reed gave a small movement of his head that Tarn couldn't interpret. We've detected that. We have protection gear, but there may not be time for everyone to suit up properly. He paused. Some of my people will have to expose themselves to your environment. That could be fatal for your crew, Tarn said, surprised by the human's willingness to risk his people. We'll take that chance, Reed replied simply. Prepare your people for transfer. We'll dock in 10 minutes. As the communication ended, Elder Vel shook his head in disbelief. They're going to expose themselves to our atmosphere? Knowingly? It seems, Tarn said slowly, that the stories about Deathworlders may have some truth to them after all. Commander, Reed coughed blood into his sleeve, trying to hide it from his crew. The radiation damage from their journey was worse than he'd let on, but there was no time to worry about that now. The alien ship, the Lumi vessel, was being pulled toward the anomaly faster than their initial calculations had predicted. Chut, procedure initiated, reported Navigator Wilson. 2 minutes to contact. Team leaders, Reed called out, report to the airlock. Bring only essential protection gear. We move fast. Get everyone out. No delays. Medical Officer Park approached, him scanner in hand. Commander, you're in no condition to... Not now, Park. Reed cut him off. How many radiation kits do we have left? Park frowned. Enough for our crew, but not for thousands of aliens. Then we focus on getting them onto the ships first. Our people can wait. Sir, Park said quietly. Some of our crew won't survive another radiation exposure without treatment. Reed met his gaze steadily. None of those aliens will survive if we don't get them off that ship. We didn't come all this way to save half of them. The ships docked with a metallic clang that resonated through the hull. Reed led the first team to the airlock, pulling on a lightweight breathing mask but skipping the full protection suit that would have slowed him down. The moment the doors opened, a wave of foreign air hit them, heavy with gases that made Reed's eyes water and his lungs burn. Move out, he ordered, pushing through the discomfort. The Lumi ship's corridors were beautiful but strange, curved and flowing where human ships were angular and practical, and everywhere there were Lumi, blue-skinned beings with tentacle-like growths on their heads staring at the humans with huge, frightened eyes. We're here to help, Reed called out, his translator converting his words. Please follow my people to the evacuation ships. The first few Lumi moved hesitantly toward the humans, then stopped in shock as they noticed something. One of Reed's, Team Engineer Lopez, had removed his mask after it malfunctioned, exposing his face directly to the Lumi atmosphere. He was coughing violently, his skin blistering where the alien air touched it, but he continued helping the aliens toward the Airlock. Your air, gasped a Lumi female. It's killing him. Lopez managed a pained smile. It's just uncomfortable, ma'am. Please keep moving. Reed watched as the Lumi whispered among themselves, pointing at Lopez and the other humans who were clearly suffering but continuing to work. Something changed in their demeanor, the fear giving way to a kind of awe. Over the next hour, the humans worked tirelessly to evacuate the Lumi. The alien atmosphere burned their lungs and skin. The ship's higher gravity strained their muscles. Several humans collapsed from the combined effects of radiation sickness and toxic exposure, only to push themselves up again and continue working. Reed found himself helping a very old Lumi with whitehead tentacles, Elder Vel, according to his translator. Why? The elder asked as Reed half-carried him toward the airlock. Why would you endure pain to save beings you've never met? Beings who feared you? Reed didn't have a philosophical answer ready. Because you needed help, he said simply. And we could give it. A violent tremor shook the ship, nearly knocking them off their feet. The lights flickered and died, replaced by dim emergency lighting. Captain, Wilson's voice came through Reed's comm unit. The anomaly's pull is increasing exponentially. We have 15 minutes before the Lumi ship breaks apart. Reed keyed, his comm. How many more Lumi to evacuate? At least 2,000, sir. Reed looked around at his exhausted, injured team, then at the frightened aliens still waiting to be rescued. We need a new plan, he said. We can't evacuate them all in time. He turned to Elder Vel. Is there any way to protect your ship from the anomaly, even temporarily? The Elder's large eyes widened. You want to save our ship as well? That's impossible. The dark energy disrupts all known shield technologies. Reed thought of the FTL drives on their ships, experimental technology that manipulated space-time itself. Maybe not all technologies, he said. Lopez, he called to his engineer. I need you to adapt our FTL drives now. Lopez staggered over, still coughing blood. What do you have in mind, Commander? Something impossible, Reed replied. Something only Deathworlders would be crazy enough to try. Engineer Lopez stared at Commander Reed as if he had lost his mind. Sir, you want to use our FTL drives to create a shield around the Lumi ship? Reed nodded, wiping blood from his nose with his sleeve. The drives bend space-time. If we position our 3 ships in a triangle formation around the Lumi vessel and reverse the drive's polarity, we might be able to create a bubble of stable space. Lopez coughed violently, his lungs burning from the alien atmosphere. That's completely untested. It could tear all 4 ships apart. Or it could work, Reed insisted. How long would it take to make the adjustments? Lopez thought for a moment. 20 minutes if I push the systems beyond safety limits. We have 15 before this ship breaks apart, Reed reminded him. Lopez gave a grim smile. Then I'd better work fast. As Lopez rushed off to begin the modifications, Reed turned to Captain Tarn, who had been listening to the exchange with a mixture of confusion and hope. What are you planning? The Lumi captain asked. We're going to try to save your ship, Reed explained. Keep evacuating your people to our vessels as a backup plan, but we're going to attempt something else first. Elder Vel hobbled forward, his ancient eyes studying Reed intently. You are risking your ships, your lives, on an untested theory? Reed nodded. That's what humans do. We adapt, we improvise, and sometimes we attempt the impossible. Because the alternative is unacceptable. Vel's head tendrils quivered with emotion. Truly, we did not understand what Deathworlders really meant. The next 15 minutes were a blur of frantic activity. Lopez and his engineering team worked desperately on the FTL drives, pushing past pain and exhaustion. The evacuation continued, as quickly as possible, with humans carrying injured Lumi despite their own worsening conditions. Reed coordinated from the Lumi bridge, which gave him a better view of all 3 human ships. His skin felt like it was on fire, and breathing was becoming increasingly difficult, but he ignored the pain. Commander, came Wilson's voice over the comm. The drives are ready, but Lopez says the modifications are highly unstable. Once activated, We'll have maybe 5 minutes before the drives overload. Understood, Reed replied. Tell all 3 ships to move into position. Triangle formation, equidistant around the Lumi vessel. On the view screen, Reed watched as Horizon Beta and Gamma moved into place, their hulls already showing signs of stress from the pull of the dark energy anomaly. Sir, Wilson continued. Lopez also says there's a 90% chance this will kill us all. Reed closed his eyes briefly. Ask him if he has a better idea. There was a pause. He says no, sir. Then we proceed. On my mark, all ships activate the modified drives simultaneously. The bridge fell silent as everyone, human and Lumi alike, watched the view screen. The dark energy storm loomed ever closer, its edges now beginning to touch the outer hull of the Lumi ship. Mark, Reed commanded. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The space around all 4 ships seemed to warp and bend, the stars visible through the view screen stretching into long streaks of light. A shimmering bubble formed, encasing the Lumi ship and pushing back the tendrils of dark energy that had begun to eat away at its hull. It's working, someone shouted, but their celebration was short-lived. The entire ship shuddered violently, throwing several people to the floor. The bubble is unstable, reported Officer Mira from her station. It's fighting against the pull of the anomaly. Another, stronger tremor shook the ship. Warning alarms blared across all systems. Lopez reports the drives are overheating. Wilson's voice crackled through the comm. 3 minutes until failure. Captain Tarn turned to Reed, his blue face now ashen gray. It was a valiant attempt, Commander, but it seems... We're not done yet, Reed interrupted, an idea forming. The bubble is holding back the anomaly, but it's not strong enough. He keyed his comm. Lopez, what if we move inside the anomaly itself, taking the Lumi ship with us? There was a stunned silence before Lopez replied. Into the anomaly? That's suicide. Maybe not, Reed insisted. The storm feeds on energy and matter, right? What if we give it something else to feed on? The drives themselves. Lopez was quiet, for a moment. You're suggesting we fly into the anomaly, then detonate the FTL drives inside it? The release of energy might disrupt its structure. Exactly, said Reed. Can we do it? Theoretically. Lopez paused. Yes, but Commander, whoever pilots the ships won't survive. The radiation alone would kill them before they could escape, even if the explosion doesn't. Reed looked around the bridge at the Lumi, who were watching him with their large, alien eyes. These people had lost their homeworld, their colonies, nearly everything. And they had been saved not by their allies, but by the very beings they had feared most. Deathworlders. I'll pilot Horizon Alpha, Reed said firmly. Ask for volunteers from Beta and Gamma. Sir, Wilson protested, there has to be another way. There isn't, Reed replied simply. And we're out of time. He turned to Captain Tarn. Get your people to the evacuation ships now. Leave a skeleton crew to help me pilot your vessel. Tarn stared at him in disbelief. You would sacrifice yourself for us? Why? Reed thought about Earth, about mountains and oceans, about cities and farms, about all the beauty and pain that had forged humanity into what they were, because we come from a world that tried to kill us every day, he said quietly. We evolved to face impossible odds and survive anyway. If your people make it through this, remember that about humans. We don't know how to give up. Within minutes, the plan was in motion. Most of the Lumi had been evacuated to the support ships. Reed stood at the controls of Horizon Alpha with a small team of volunteers who had refused to leave their commander. On the view screen, he could see Horizon Beta and Gamma flanking them, each piloted by a single brave crew member. All ships report ready, Commander, said Wilson, who had also stayed behind despite Reed's orders. FTL drives are primed for detonation. Reed nodded. Release the stabilization bubble on my mark. He took a deep breath of the burning alien air. 3, 2, 1. Mark. The protective bubble collapsed, and immediately the dark energy began, tearing at the ship's hulls. Reed pushed the engines to full power, driving all 4 vessels directly toward the heart of the anomaly. "Entering the outer boundary now," reported Wilson, her voice steady despite the situation. "Hull integrity failing. Radiation levels beyond measurable limits." The view screen showed only darkness now, a complete absence of light or matter. It was like flying into nothingness itself. "We've reached the target depth," Wilson said. "Detonation. Sequence ready." Reed placed his hand on the final control. Around him, human and Lumi crew members stood at attention, facing death with dignity. "For Earth," Reed said. "And for Lumina." He pressed the button. The FTL drives exploded with a force that should have destroyed everything instantly. But instead of simple destruction, something strange happened. The massive energy release seemed to tear a hole in the very fabric of the anomaly. Light returned to the view screen. Not the darkness of the storm, but the normal starfield of space. The last thing Reed saw before losing consciousness was the anomaly collapsing in on itself, the unnatural darkness folding inward until it vanished. Completely. His last thought was a simple one. Humans had done the impossible again. Commander Reed opened his eyes slowly, surprised to be opening them at all. A white ceiling came into focus above him. He was lying on a bed in what appeared to be a medical facility, but the design was unfamiliar, all flowing curves and soft blue light. "He's awake," said a voice nearby. Reed turned his head, wincing at the pain that shot through his skull. Medical Officer Park stood beside his bed, looking tired but relieved. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Commander," Park said with a smile. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." Reed tried to sit up but found his body surprisingly weak. "The ships? The Lumi? What happened?" "Easy," Park said, gently pushing him back down. "Everyone made it. When the anomaly collapsed, there was a massive energy wave that knocked out most of our systems, but the structure of all 4 ships remained intact. We lost some good people to radiation poisoning, but far fewer than expected." Reed closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing this information. "And the anomaly?" "Completely gone. Your crazy plan worked. The scientists are still trying to figure out exactly how. But the leading theory is that the FTL drives created a sort of anti-energy that canceled out the dark energy storm." The door to the medical bay slid open, and Captain Tarn entered, followed by Elder Vel. The Lumi captain looked better than the last time Reed had seen him. His blue skin had regained its healthy glow, and his posture was straighter. "Commander Reed," Tarn said, bowing slightly. "It is good to see you recovering." Reed nodded in greeting. "Captain, I'm glad your people made it safely." "Thanks to you and your crew," Tarn replied. "We owe you a debt that can never be repaid." "Elder." Vel stepped forward, his ancient eyes studying Reed intensely. "We have been discussing your actions since the rescue. Many of my people are confused. The stories we had about Deathworlders did not prepare us for beings who would sacrifice themselves for strangers." Reed tried to smile, though his cracked lips made it painful. "Maybe you had the wrong stories." "Indeed," Vel agreed. "We classified Earth as a death world because of its harsh conditions, the crushing gravity, the corrosive oxygen atmosphere, the extreme temperatures, the constant natural disasters. We assumed any species evolving in such an environment would be aggressive, selfish, focused only on survival at any cost. We can be those things," Reed admitted. "Human history has plenty of darkness. But surviving a harsh world also taught us other lessons." "Such as?" Tarn asked, genuinely curious. Reed thought for a moment. "That we're stronger together than alone. That sacrifice for others has meaning. That facing impossible challenges makes us better, not worse." Vel nodded slowly, his head tendrils waving gently. "We are beginning to understand. Perhaps it is not despite your death world origins, but because of them that you became the beings who would answer our call for help." 6 months later, Reed stood on the observation deck of the recently constructed human outpost on Lumi's new homeworld. a habitable moon that Earth's governments had helped them claim and settle. The landscape below was beautiful, purple vegetation stretching toward a blue-green sky, with the gas giant the moon orbited rising majestically on the horizon. Elder Vel joined him at the window, moving more slowly now as his age continued to advance. The council meeting went well, the elder reported. The settlement efforts are ahead of schedule. Your engineers have been invaluable in adapting our technology to this environment. Reed nodded. And the communication system? Operational, Vel confirmed. We made contact with the Alliance this morning. They were surprised to learn we had survived. Even more surprised to learn who had saved us. Reed smiled slightly. Since the rescue, relations between humans and the Lumi had grown quickly. The two species were different in countless ways, physically, culturally, historically, but they had formed a bond forged in crisis. How did they react to your proposal? Reed asked. Vel's face showed an expression Reed had learned was the Lumi equivalent of a smile. There was significant resistance at first. Many Alliance species share our old fears about Deathworlders. But our testimony, and the evidence of your actions, was compelling. The vote passed by a narrow margin. Reed felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The vote meant that humanity would be classified as an allied species rather than a potential threat. It meant open trade, cultural exchange, and protection under Alliance law. There's more, Vel continued. The Council has created a new classification in their system. Previously, worlds like Earth were simply labeled death worlds, planets to be avoided. Now there is a new category, crucible worlds. Crucible worlds? Reed repeated. Yes. The term refers to the vessels used to withstand intense heat while forging metals into something stronger, more useful. Vel's eyes twinkled. The Council recognized that the very hardships of your world forged your species into something remarkable, beings of exceptional resilience, ingenuity, and compassion. Below them, human and Lumi children played together in a newly constructed park. The Lumi children moved with grace and caution, while the human children ran, jumped, and climbed with the boundless energy characteristic of their species. But they were playing together, learning from each other. Not everyone agrees with the Council's decision, Vel admitted. Some Alliance species still fear what humans might become if they spread throughout the galaxy. They worry about your adaptability, your tendency to change everything you touch. Are they wrong to worry? Reed asked honestly. Vel considered this. Perhaps not. You are indeed dangerous in your way. But I have come to believe that the universe needs some danger. The safe, comfortable species of the Alliance, my own included, were helpless against the dark energy storm. We had grown too cautious, too predictable. He turned to face Reed directly. The Lumi have a saying, still water grows stagnant. Perhaps the Alliance has been still water for too long. Perhaps it needs the current that humanity brings. Reed watched as a human child helped a Lumi child climb a structure that would have been too tall for the Lumi to manage alone. The human child didn't simply carry the Lumi, but showed them how to find handholds, how to test their weight, how to overcome the challenge themselves. A week ago, Vel said, one of your engineers took ill with a Lumi virus, something that should have been harmless to you but mutated. Your doctor said the fever would have killed most humans. Reed nodded. I heard Turner, right? He was back at work the next day. Yes, said Vel, his voice filled with wonder. When I asked him how he recovered so quickly, he said something I've been pondering ever since. What was that? He said, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. At first, I thought it was just one of your human sayings. But now I wonder if it's the key to understanding your species. Vel looked out at the stars becoming visible as the day ended. You don't merely survive adversity, you transform it into advantage. Reed smiled. We call that being human. Vel nodded thoughtfully. And we called you Deathworlders. We were both right in our ways. But I think Crucible Worlders fits better. He placed a thin, four-fingered hand on Reed's arm. When the next impossible challenge comes, and it will, I suspect the galaxy will no longer pray for anyone but the Deathworlders to hear their call. As night fell on the new Lumi colony, messages were already spreading across Alliance space, stories of the humans who had done the impossible, who had survived what should have killed them, who had turned certain death into unlikely victory. The Deathworlders had arrived in the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same again.